Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about the man's place in the home. I think one of the largest breakdowns of society today is that there's a lot of single moms trying to do two-parent jobs, and I'm not saying that they can't do it, but I believe strongly that it wasn't meant to be that way. So we're going to just kind of discuss some of that and kind of go over that. So what do you think about that? You live up towards Seattle, and they say that's the single mom capital of the U.S.
I have to agree, but it's not any fault of their own. We're also the most romantic city according to Yelp.com. So there's a lot of guys doing their thing, but they're
and
doing
then buzzing
it,
out afterwards.
doing it again and doing it again. So.
All right, they're like, hey, let's go up to the Space Needle.
Yeah, like I haven't heard that before.
Exactly. Sure, I've only been up there 35 times, and 6 of my children were conceived up there.
But we don't judge.
That's right. I mean, there's a great church up there, Mars Hill Church.
Absolutely.
And I watched the pastor quite a bit on his videos. And they talk about being one of the most unchurched cities. You live just south of that. Mm-hmm. And do you find that there's churches are prevalent up in your area?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I mean, you can't throw a rock without finding one. I mean, I never paid attention to them before because they're so diverse. The faith is just so diverse. So yeah, there's churches everywhere.
And his church has actually got a great model for churches that I've never seen used before. Being able to target worship tends to be a sticky part between the older generation and the younger generation. The people in the middle kind of don't care one way or another. They like worshiping no matter how heavy or how soft it is. And so their church actually breaks it up into 3 different groups. They hear the same sermon, but they hear 3 different worship services.
Yep, absolutely. The pastor is pretty much his video feed is piped into each of the auditoriums, and there's 3 different ones. So they worship differently, different music, but then it's the same message.
And the reason I'm talking about this is because I think that a lot of men use, well, the churches aren't my style as an excuse for not getting themselves into church. They don't like the music, or they don't like the atmosphere, they don't this or that. And so they tend to, speaking of, my son is just over there, so if you hear some noises, that's him. So I think that especially with like Mars Hill and their church, they're breaking
Sound Life
that.
Church, and we'll put both the description for both Mars Hill and Sound Life in the links below.
I think that they're breaking up the norm of what we used to consider church, where we opened up a hymnal and read hymns and then did 2 songs standing and 2 songs sitting, and that gave Grandpa a chance to fall asleep right before the sermon started. And the pastor always got louder towards the end to wake Grandpa up, so that way they could leave for breakfast in the morning. That's the way I always saw church anyway.
And really, it's just the same thing. They're repeating the same information, and people just still can't grasp the concepts over all these generations that we've been going to church. It's the same information. Jesus is alive. He rose from the grave on the 3rd day, and one day he will return.
Right. And so I think that we need to get away from, as men, we need to quit with the excuses and really start realizing that our role and our place in society is to be role models for our children, both our girls and our boys.
Absolutely.
And as long as we continue to say, hey, I'm out, and not pay attention to what our roles are, society in general is going to continue to break down.
Absolutely, because the children emulate what they see, and if they see fathers who abandon, then they expect that role to be fulfilled, or just get a vasectomy like me, because I'm like, I don't want anything to get pregnant or anything to get anything else pregnant. Right. So that was my, motivation behind that. But because I didn't want to deal with what he's going to have to deal with, but at the same time, he also has somebody else that's going to take care of a lot of that for him. Right. Because he can put the fear of God into his children. Atheists can't.
Right. And see, what a lot of people forget, too, is that God, everybody's, I had somebody tell me the other day, well, God's a single parent. But he's not, because he created man and woman both from his, they're like Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
Like half of him is feminine and soft and caring, and those are the areas in the Bible that are soft, caring, and soft spoken. And then he was also masculine and abrasive and aggressive.
Yes, absolutely.
Like when he busted into that church and said, you know, you guys have turned this into a den of thieves.
Matthew
And
21:13.
and he tore up the tables
Yeah.
and got angry. So there are both sides to God. So he himself designed us that way, and so it is hard for him to even fathom us being single parent, because that's not the way it was ever
it's not
designed.
the way it's not. Yeah.
And just something that, you know, I've heard talked about before is like 1 Timothy 5:8 says, anyone or any man who does not provide for their relatives and especially for their own household has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever.
Wow, that's basically like saying that and they're worse than an atheist, because what is an atheist? An atheist is an unbeliever. So Scripture is saying that any Christian, anybody that loves God and doesn't provide for their own family is worse than the atheist who
Right.
loves their family.
Right. And, you know, a lot of people take that in many different interpretations. Society today, they did a study that 40% of all households are the mom makes the money, and 80% of that is driven by the fact that they're single moms. So you've got 20% where it's just the man makes less than the wife but still works, and then the other 20% or the other 80% of that is single moms being the only source of income, whether that's social welfare, whether that's working at McDonald's, or whether that's even
Three jobs sometimes.
Yep,
Yeah.
whether it's just
Because
holding down the house.
you men won't pull the weight, they have to pull more than their weight, because we know that women make 70 cents on the dollar that a man makes. So first of all, she's single, makes 70 cents on the dollar that you make, and she has to work 3 jobs to make up the difference. So get out there and take care of your kids.
Right, she has to work a third harder just to make what a man can make.
Exactly.
And you know, so I think as we start to dive into this with my new channel out, we're going to talk more about ways that men who have not been a part of their family can start to slip back in and build trust with their girlfriends or their ex-spouses or whatever the case may be.
To make amends.
And because their role in the house or in their kids' lives especially is very, very important. You know, I've got 2 children who would be fatherless for the most part if it wasn't for the fact that I was more than willing and just wanted to take them in and love on them. So so that's the other thing for you dads out there that are dads to kids. You know, maybe think about adoption or just mentoring to
Big brother
those kids.
programs,
Yeah,
yeah.
mentoring to those kids who don't have a positive male figure in their lives, just to keep them from going down the wrong path. And just making yourself available for that, whether it's, you know, getting together and coaching your kids a softball or baseball or whatever.
Or assisting, or even offering, you know, I can carry some equipment, you know, you got to start somewhere.
Right, exactly. So, Dan, you kind of lived a hectic life growing up, and your biological father wasn't much part of your life.
I remember it all.
Yeah, and but you had a stepdad,
Yes.
and that was
And I didn't
It
take
was-
his name because that's all he had.
right. And so, you know, I can't relate to those kids in that aspect because I have a great dad, and I have, you know, was raised well with my father.
And obviously, we had different lives because of that.
Right.
You have children now, and I came from a bigger family that was kind of dysfunctional, so I don't have children yet.
Right.
Until, you know, because I wanted to make sure that it's a good scenario.
Right. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, and just kind of go over those aspects. Do you have anything that you want to add to the conversation a little bit?
Just love the one you're with.
Exactly. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and like, subscribe, and share.